All right, just some thoughts I wanted to express. Sometimes I get overwhelmingly sad in this life after coming into this truth for a lot of reasons. One reason is because most people aren't going to be saved, and that's a very heavy truth to accept and to dwell on and to meditate on. Like that's what Christ himself says in Matthew 7:13-14, and Matthew 7:21-24, and Luke 13:24-27, and Revelation 21 verse 8, and Galatians 5:19-21, and Ephesians 5:3-5, and 1 Corinthians 6:9-11. All those scriptures show that very few people are going to be saved. And, coming into this truth, most of your focus is on your own walk, like Philippians 2 verse 12 says, to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Because we're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ by ourselves. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 10 says we're all going to come before the judgment seat of Christ and receive in our body what we have done, whether good or bad. And so that's like the main focus when you come to this truth. But, if you have a heart and mind, you want others to be saved, and you realize most of the world is lost. And that is, that's a really heavy thing to sit with, because people in your life that you love or that you know or that you interact with, you can tell by their fruit that they're just not in the truth. And, for whatever reason, whether they're deceived or they don't care, or they're in some world religion or whatever it is, they're lost. And our job isn't to save everyone. We just have to be a light and plant seeds, and then it's up to the Spirit, whether it's up to the Spirit in that person, whether they're gonna actually seek it out after that. But I get really sad sometimes, and I hope some of you others that maybe do, to just know it's okay, and it's actually biblical to feel those things. A lot of people won't let themselves feel those things, and they just turn themselves off emotionally. A lot of people are out here walking around are really dead emotionally. A lot of the older men, even Christian older men, like the tough guy, conservative Christian man, a lot of times, not all, but there's just kind of to give an example, some of those guys are really emotionally dead. Like that generation of 50 to 65 year olds, just the way a lot of people were brought up, there wasn't much emotional connection maybe with their parents, and then they never healed from that, and they never maybe truly had a circumcision of heart, maybe never truly had a lot of interchange, like Luke 17:20-21 says, and Matthew 18:3, becoming like a child on the inside. So a lot of people just stay dead, even though maybe they believe in the Messiah or whatever, or there's a lot of people in the world that just, have become emotionally dead. And it's all prophesied, like Matthew 13:15. Christ says people's hearts will be waxed gross. They'll be turned off. And so a lot of people's hearts and minds are turned off, and emotions are turned off. And you can get in this truth, and, you start to actually change, and the Spirit works in you, and your emotions come alive, and there's a lot of things you feel. And one of them may be grief and sadness. Like Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, with much wisdom is much grief. Let me just get that. I don't remember exactly where it is. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. That's true. If you start to gain wisdom and walk the path of truth, it can be a very lonely walk, because you have to separate yourself from friendships that are ungodly, maybe family connections that are ungodly. You have to come out of the ways of the world. You have to come out of the Christian religions, which is where most of the community is found, yet you have to separate yourself from that. And he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. So you gain the knowledge just by meditating on Matthew 7:13-14 and Matthew 7:21-24, realizing that a lot of people are not going to be entering the kingdom of heaven. That can increase your sorrow. Because if you have compassion for the multitude and for the lost, it's like, wow, these people are lost and they're just on the way to destruction. And it's like, if you realize you're a human and they're a human, well, they're a human. They have emotions and feelings and thoughts, and you know that you don't want to be destroyed. Well, they don't even know. And you can just, I really pity people a lot. Usually you can just, us humans are really pitiful. You know, even our breath is given to us by God. We have to depend on him for everything. So we're just really pitiful as humans. And then even people that are lost, it's just like really pitiful. No purpose. Just slave to like all sorts of things. And especially if you've been in the slave in the past, like I have to certain things, you can look at your old self and it's very, you just pity your old self, and it's really sad. And so you just kind of pity people. And so I just feel really sad sometimes, and sometimes it's way too overwhelming. I don't necessarily dwell on it, and I don't, you know, we're not supposed to dwell on those things, but it's not like a sin or like unbiblical to dwell on, you know, these sorts of matters and to let yourself feel some things. It's okay. You know, you don't have to feel joy and happiness all the time. In fact, it's definitely not going to happen at all when you're actually following the real truth. You're probably going to feel the opposite, the heavier things more, to be honest, especially in this world we live in. It says in Malachi, Malachi 3:14, the Israelites, they said, this is what they were thinking. They said, you have said it is vain to serve God, and what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance and that we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts? See, so they were not serving him at this time, and they basically said, well, what does it even matter to serve God? It's vain. Why do we need to be serious and walk mournfully before the Lord? You know, fast and pray, that's not easy. Giving up sins is not easy. Mourning for the sins that you've committed, not easy. Like why do that? That's vain. You know, they're thinking that they weren't getting anything out of that, right? They can go burn incense to these other gods and manifest, and it's a lot more exciting or something, right? Even people today, you know, people think serving God is like he's like a no fun God or something. It's not like that at all. It's actually a real purpose, you know, like trying to overcome these low level desires that we have of pride and lust and ego, and strife and jealousy and all that. Like overcoming those things is satisfying. Okay. Short-term pleasure is not fun. It's just, you just think it's fun, and then you do it enough, and hopefully the Lord allows you to experience how it's not worth it. And then you hit rock bottom, then you come to him, and then you never go back. But this is what people think today, you know, it is vain to serve God. And, you know, what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, you know, followed his ways, and that we have walked mournfully before the Lord of hosts, thinking that it doesn't profit. But like, that is part of following the Creator, is a serious, circumspect walk. It's not praise Jesus, hallelujah all the time, because people think they're already saved. And so they just, you know, praise Jesus joy all the time. But biblical joy is not really like that. And so there's some scriptures that I had pulled up, that even David showed, who was a man after God's own heart, just showing that, like, feeling for the lost is totally okay. We just don't want to dwell on it. You don't want to dwell on it. I mean, Solomon says there's a time for everything. There is a time to mourn. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. You know, it goes through time to be born, time to die, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. So it's not always a time to dance and to laugh. Sometimes it's weep and mourn, and sometimes you're in this truth and you're reading this Bible and you're thinking about the world at large, and you're allowing yourself to be grounded in reality, and you realize how bad it is, and you end up sighing and crying over the abominations that are committed both in the body and in the world. And that's a lot to handle. And it's a lot to handle by yourself, for sure. It can make you stronger if we take that to the Father. So it's not a bad thing to do that. It's just we don't want to dwell on it, because someone has to be a light in this world, right? But when you're by yourself going in the secret closet, it's okay to express all that to the Father. In fact, it's encouraged. We're supposed to. We don't want to hold that inside of us, and it all builds up, and then you end up like having these walls, you know, in your heart and mind that you can't get rid of. because you never allowed yourself to feel. So this is the book of Psalms 119. There's 3 verses in Psalm 119 that just paint a picture of, what it's like to feel for the lost. And Psalm 119, side note, is one of the best chapters in the whole Bible. It's the longest chapter. It's all about the law and the commandments and precepts. You'll learn a lot meditating on that chapter and making notes and everything. And the word precept shows up like 20 times in that book. So you'll understand precepts when you read that chapter, Psalm 119, right? Because that's how we study the scriptures, through precepts, connecting scriptures together for understanding of doctrine. But anyway, Psalm 119 verse 53, it says, horror has taken hold upon me because of the wicked that forsake thy law. Right? Horror has taken hold upon me because of the wicked that forsake thy law. And Psalm 119 verse 136 states that rivers of waters run down mine eyes because they keep not thy law. Right? Very interesting. And Psalm 119 verse 158 says, I beheld the transgressors and was grieved because they kept not thy word. So 3 different times we see David was seriously beside himself, looking at the inhabitants of the earth that rejected God and his ways. So much so that even he was crying. Probably for a lot of reasons. 1, he saw how much sin in the world and he could sigh and cry over that. 2, he could even look at people that are lost and that are slaves to sin and be like, that is a miserable, pitiful state. And you have compassion on people, and it's like, I don't want you to be destroyed. I want you to have life. Like, you're in a pitiful state. And just, crying because people are lost. They don't have any love and hope. And that's really sad. And even people you love in your own life that are not on the path, or not seeking the path, that's really heavy and hard on you. And I think a lot of people just skip over that and don't want to feel all that because it's too much. And I understand, but maybe allow yourself to feel that sometimes and take that to the Father, right? I mean, David did. Just totally beside himself of those that forsake the law. And 3 different times talking about how all these people that forsake, God's word, and what that looks like on a massive level with all the inhabitants of the earth, and on a single person level, right? Each individual, what that looks like. And it's really sad. I mean, I cry for people. It just comes on me sometimes, and it's really hard. And it's so crazy. Like, you end up caring more for these people than they care for themselves. How is that fair? That's not even fair. Like, you have to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, and you end up like just caring for these other people that don't even care about themselves. Like, you care more about their soul than they care about theirs. And then you become grieved because of it. So how is that fair? Right? That's crazy. I mean, people don't care about themselves, and the people in the truth that are like compassionate and like empathetic end up caring more for these other people's souls. I will pull up one more scripture. It's in Ecclesiasticus. Ecclesiasticus chapter 30, verse 23, it says, love thine own soul and comfort thy heart. Remove sorrow far from thee, for sorrow has killed many, and there is no profit therein. Envy and wrath shorten the life, and carefulness bringeth age before the time. And before that, verse 21, it says, give not over thine mind to heaviness, and afflict not thyself in thine own counsel. So sometimes with me, I just get so deep in thought and like thinking about all these like big picture things about like what it even means to be human. And then all this, you allow yourself to feel all these abominations that go on everywhere, and it's like so much. And then you end up depersonalizing. Like I've depersonalized before, where if you look that up, it's just basically where it's a state of being where you're like, you don't really know who you are, and it's like an out of body experience where you're just not really grounded in who you are in your body, because you're so vexed in your spirit, and it's really uncomfortable and overwhelming, and you don't know who you are. It's kind of scary. So that's happened before, because you're like alone. And whenever that happens, I just seriously pray to the Father in tears, and I feel very comforted, and it gets better. So the point is, it's not that this is contradicting Solomon and Ecclesiastes, because there is a time to feel these things and everything, but to not let it overtake you and consume you. And even, therapy can be good, or why we need community, so that you can take some of this to others and we can bear each other's burdens, so we don't have to feel this alone, because it can be too much, right? It says, afflict not thyself in thine own counsel, right? When you give your mind over to heaviness by yourself all the time, that's really hard. So community is good for that, or therapy is good for that, right? And just not dwelling on it too much, right? And trying to have some positivity in our life and being a light to others. So it's about balance, because some people, you can like at times I've gotten too much into this side of things. And then I know some people, they get too much into the joy side of things, and they don't even read the hard stuff in the Bible, or they don't even allow themselves to sigh and cry over the abominations. So there's a balance, right? So I hope it encourages you, like, if you go through this, it's biblical, it's okay. Just don't let it totally take over your life. Ask for the Father to give you a balanced heart and mind, so that, you can have His desires and His viewpoint on what's going on in the world, and, be grounded in reality, but also, being able to be grounded with balance, so you can be a light to others, and you can be productive in this world, right? So hope this helps.